The night before our wedding was supposed to happen, everything I believed in collapsed without warning. News broke that the man Sarah claimed to despise more than anyone else had died in a violent crash. I didn't think much of it at first, until I saw her. At the accident site, she wasn't acting like someone who had lost an enemy. She was clinging to his lifeless body, shaking, sobbing in a way I had never witnessed in all our years together. That was when the truth surfaced. The hatred she showed the world was a cover. What she'd been hiding was love, deep, consuming, undeniable. Overwhelmed by guilt and grief, she postponed our wedding. She said she needed time to heal, to understand herself. She took his ashes and disappeared for months, traveling from country to country, chasing peace and forgiveness. I stayed behind, convincing myself that patience would fix everything. When she finally returned, she looked calmer, steadier. She told me she was ready now, ready to build a life with me, ready to move forward. I wanted to believe her. I almost did. What neither of us knew was that the accident she mourned had claimed more than one life. The day I returned from a short business trip, my car was struck right outside Sarah's office. It happened so fast that there was no pain, just silence. I remember hovering above the street, watching the scene unfold under a bright midday sun that gave off no warmth at all. Sarah burst out of the building when she heard the crash. She dropped to the pavement, screaming, tears pouring down her face as she cradled a man's head in her hands. Her grief was raw, uncontrollable, terrifying in its intensity. My chest tightened as I followed her gaze. She wasn't holding me. It was him, the same man she had traveled the world to mourn, the same rival she claimed to hate. She brushed dirt from his face with trembling fingers, whispering his name, begging him not to leave her. Anyone watching would have thought he was merely asleep, wrapped in her desperate care. I lay several feet away, broken and twisted, barely recognizable. My shirt, one she had picked out herself, was stained and torn. My ring caught the sunlight, flashing once uselessly. She never looked my way. Not once. Emergency crews arrived, their movements quick and practiced. Someone covered my body, lifted me onto a stretcher like an afterthought. As they wheeled me past her, she glanced up, and for a brief second, I felt hope. Then she lunged forward, not toward me, but toward him, pushing my stretcher aside as if it were an obstacle. She dropped to her knees, pleading with the medics to save him, her voice breaking in front of strangers. To everyone else, Sarah was known as controlled, distant, almost untouchable. Even with me, her affection was quiet, restrained, carefully measured. I used to think that was just who she was. Watching her then, shattered and unfiltered, I finally understood. She hadn't been holding back with the world. She had only been holding back with me. All that rage she showed, the disgust she claimed to feel, even the love she pretended didn't exist, it had all been reserved for one man. Whatever I believed we shared vanished instantly, like it had never been real to begin with. My stomach twisted, and I stepped back, unable to watch her anymore. That's when I noticed a phone lie in the road. Its screen shattered, a dark case cracked open with a small metal charm still hanging on. I recognized it immediately. It belonged to him. The screen hadn't gone black yet. Messages were still open. The last two were burned into my mind. From her, "I'm getting married." From him, "Wait for me." And then everything came rushing back. I never told her I was returning early. I wanted it to be a surprise. The moment my plane landed, I went straight to her office, replaying how she'd leaned against the doorway before I left, voice soft, promising she'd miss me and that she'd marry me the second I returned. Remembering that made me walk faster. I didn't make it far. I ran into him in the lobby. He was staring at his phone, smirking like he owned the world. When he saw me, his expression twisted with open contempt. "Did you see this?" he said casually. "If I don't get the green light, that wedding doesn't happen. She might hate me out loud, but she loves me quietly. I'm the only one who matches her." His eyes dropped to my wrinkled travel clothes. He smiled wider. "Be smart. Walk away. I'd rather not get my hands dirty." I hit him. After that, everything blurred. Metal screaming against metal, a vehicle spinning out of control, strangers yelling. And one clear image burned into my memory, her stumbling forward, reaching for him. For some reason, I couldn't leave her, even after that. I followed her to the hospital, but his family forced me out. Later, I watched her lock herself inside her apartment, shut off her phone, and drink until she collapsed on the couch. She used to lecture me about alcohol, about how it dulled the mind. She hadn't even touched a glass at our engagement party. Now she drank like she was trying to erase herself. On the fourth day, our friend forced the door open with his assistant. He didn't say a word before hitting her. "I know you're hurting," he said, voice shaking, "but pull yourself together. Are you really skipping his funeral?" Her head snapped to the side. She looked exhausted, older somehow. She laughed softly, broken. "I regret it," she murmured. We fought all the time. He never even knew I loved him. He stared at her. "I'm talking about you missing Ben." "At my name." She stiffened. She rubbed her temple. Annoyed. "Is he sending you?" "That's ridiculous. Julian's dead. What is Ben competing with a corpse now? I never said I wouldn't marry him. It's just postponed. Tell him to stop overreacting." I watched her closely. There was no guilt in her eyes. No fear. Of course. She didn't know. The assistant tried to speak, but our friend stopped him with a gesture. He looked at her for a long time, then scoffed. "Fine. I'll talk to him when he's back." As he left, the assistant whispered, "Shouldn't we tell her?" "I'll handle it," he replied quietly. "She can't take it." And honestly, he probably wouldn't want her to know yet. I leaned against the wall, smiling sadly. The three of us had grown up together, shared bunk beds and cheap meals, built a company from nothing. I remember when she used to come home from fancy dinners and hug me because I was eating instant noodles, promising she'd never abandon me, dreaming out loud about marrying me one day. Now she lived in luxury, and her biggest concern was how to put me aside. 3 days passed. She finally cleaned herself up. I followed her, confused, until she dropped to her knees outside his family's estate. She wanted his ashes. A full week had gone by. She never wondered why I hadn't returned. Instead, she begged his family for what remained of him. They didn't care about grief. They cared about profit. They offered to trade his ashes for the most important project I'd ever handled. Months of sleepless nights, hospital stays, everything I did for our future. She agreed instantly. When his sister brought out the urn, her hands trembled. A tear slid down her face as she whispered thanks. That was the moment the last piece of love I had left disappeared. From there, she went straight to the airport. On the way, our friend called her in a panic. "You booked a year-long cruise? You're leaving today?" She cradled the urn like it was alive. "We lost so much time," she said softly. "I want 1 year with him. No regrets. As for Ben, we'll delay the wedding." The silence on the line was heavy. "You still dare mention Ben?" he finally shouted. "Ben is dead. He died right in front of you." She sighed, tired. "Don't joke like that. I haven't even left the house." How could that be possible? The laugh that followed from the other end wasn't joyful at all. "I'm not lying," he said. "If you won't believe it, that's on you." "That's enough," Sarah cut in, her tone sharp and final. "Nothing you say will change my mind. I'm not coming back." She sounded calm, certain, almost relieved. "With you and Ben running things, I'm not worried," she added. "You only live once. Let me be selfish this time." The call ended. She pulled the SIM card from her phone and snapped it cleanly in half, like she was closing a door forever. I stared at the dead screen and pictured his face on the other end. Furious, helpless. He'd never been good at carrying everything alone. Even as a kid, his temper always flared first. I remembered senior year, the first time I ranked highest in our class. The next morning, my desk was buried in trash, a slur carved into the wood. Before I could react, he had already grabbed the culprit and dragged him into the hallway. Sarah brought me water, wiped my desk clean, and quietly retrieved the security footage. I didn't have to defend myself. I just had to keep moving forward. That was always how it worked. He fought. She planned. I balanced everything in between. Now, he had lost both of us at once. Sarah didn't seem concerned at all. After landing, She went out of her way to buy a new urn, black stone, understated, carefully crafted. It didn't suit him. He had always been loud, bold, impossible to ignore. The first time I met him, it was at a club for our friend's birthday. Music pounding, lights flashing, and there he was dressed in red, drunk, magnetic. He stumbled straight into her arms. They locked eyes. Then he kissed her right in front of me, dared me to react. She shoved him away, disgust clear on her face, calling him a creep as he fell onto broken glass. She took my hand immediately, pulling me away. But I noticed it then, the faint redness in her ear she couldn't hide. That night left a scar on his hand. He wore gloves after that. Maybe that was where her guilt began. Now she stood carving his name into stone, ignoring the blood seeping from her fingers. 3 words etched slowly, mixed with tears and crimson streaks. Love that arrived far too late. On the balcony of the cruise ship, see air brushed past us. Sunlight slid across her face as she wiped the urn clean, gentle and focused. It reminded me of the first day we met. 2 kids in an unfamiliar place, when she awkwardly wiped my face and promised she'd protect me. Traveling with her was unbearable to watch, yet strangely beautiful. Places I'd never seen. Views we once only imagined from a cramped room. She planned every stop carefully, carried the ashes everywhere, explained histories, smiled for photos. When strangers asked, she never hesitated. This is my partner. My ring disappeared early in the trip. She traded it to a street painter for a portrait of her and him locked in an embrace. Sometimes she would stop and stare at distant mountains, quiet and distant. We used to talk about traveling like this. When we were young and broke. When we finally had the money, we lost the time. She used to say our honeymoon would be under the northern lights. She used to talk about growing old somewhere peaceful. I never made it to the wedding. I never made it to old age. Months later, she paused in front of a suit shop. The one in the window looked painfully familiar. She stood there for a long time, eyes heavy with something she didn't name. That night, she sat by the hotel window, scrolling through old photos. Years of memories passed under her thumb. In nearly every picture, I was facing the camera, and she was looking at me. She stopped on my graduation photo, stared into the eyes of the boy I used to be. Then she flinched, dropped the phone, and rubbed her ring finger. Bare, empty. I stood beside her, feeling nothing at all. What was she afraid of now? Was it regret? Or was it finally the truth catching up to her? Was she scared because she remembered how deeply she once loved me? Or because she was finally questioning the choice she'd made? It didn't matter anymore. I hadn't betrayed anyone. I hadn't liet. The only things I needed to reconsider were my own judgment and the faith I placed in the wrong future. The next morning, something changed. For the first time since the crash, she stepped out without carrying his ashes. She walked into a jewelry store and ordered a pair of matching rings. The design was called Rebirth. The saleswoman smiled warmly. For your wedding with your husband? Sarah returned a faint, calm smile. No, she said softly. For a beginning, that evening, on a quiet island untouched by noise or crowds, she buried the ashes herself. She stayed there for hours, whispering into dark. I have to go, she said at last. Ben is still waiting for me. I failed him once. I won't do it again. I don't regret loving you, but this life wasn't ours. Maybe the next one will be kinder. With that, she booked the earliest flight home. She went straight from the airport to the office. She looked composed, but beneath it was a nervous energy, like some about to step back into a life they'd abandoned. That anticipation collapsed when she searched the entire floor and couldn't find me. She stormed into Mike's office. Where's Ben? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Is he avoiding me? I stood behind her, looking at Mike. A year had changed him. He was leaner, sharper, like someone who'd been carved down by loss. He didn't stand up. He didn't soften his expression. Didn't I already tell you? He said coldly. He's dead. Same accident. Same day. Sarah froze. The ring box slipped from her hand, hitting the floor. The lid popped open, and the rings rolled under the sunlight like cruel little mirrors. Her face drained of color. What did you say? She whispered. Mike snapped. He yanked papers from his safe and flung them at her. He died right in front of you, he shouted. He was trying to crawl toward you, begging for help. Did you even look? The paper's edge sliced her cheek. Blood appeared, bright against her skin. She sank to her knees as the pages scattered. It was my death certificate. Seeing your own life reduced to a few typed lines is a strange thing. No, she gasped. This isn't real. This isn't him. She clutched her chest like she couldn't breathe. Mike's voice shook with rage. The day he came back early, he went straight to see you. He ran into Julian downstairs. A van lost control. That's it. 20 years of brotherhood ended in seconds. He laughed bitterly. And what were you doing? You were screaming for doctors to save the man you claimed to hate. I buried Ben alone. I didn't tell you because I thought you'd break. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him crying. He leaned forward. And you? You took someone else's ashes and vanished. Tell me, Sarah, why wasn't you? Her hands trembled violently. She started coughing, blood spilling onto her shirt. With shaking fingers, she traced the words on the certificate. Name of deceased, Ben. She had written my name countless times over 20 years. Now she traced it again and again, like the letters refused to make sense. Blood soaked into the paper. Watching her then, I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel heartbreak. I felt pity for the version of me who had tried so hard to live, to love, to build something real. A cold wind slipped through the open window, whistling softly. Mike had nothing left to say. Mike strode forward, grabbed her by the collar, and stared her down. Who do you think you're fooling with this performance? Don't try it with me. Sarah pushed his hand away slowly. She wiped the blood from her lips and looked at him with frightening calm. Where are Ben's ashes? She asked hoarsely. Her eyes were unfocused, almost feral. He's still waiting for me. I owe him a wedding. Let me see him. Mike stepped back as if she were delusional. In your dreams. Her shoulders sagged. She shut her eyes, and when she spoke again, she was crying. Mike, I was his family too. I'm begging you. Just once. Let me see him. Mike let out a harsh laugh. Do you really think you deserve that? The last thing Ben saw was you screaming for another man. If he could see you now, he'd hate you. The color drained from her face. She was wrong about one thing. I didn't hate her. I just didn't want her anymore. What we had wasn't love now, but there had been a bond once. Family, in a way. What I felt was regret. Regret for the years I spent believing in a future that was never truly mine. Mike turned toward the door. Dave, take her out, and don't ever let her back in. Dave hesitated, then approached to help her up. Sarah didn't move. She looked hollow, like something already gone. Dave straightened and spoke carefully, though his words were sharp. Miss Vance, there's something you should know. Ben's trip was supposed to be 2 weeks. He pushed himself to finish early so he could come back for your birthday. He cut it down to 1 week. He wanted to surprise you. Her head snapped up. What did you say? Dave didn't stop. He also left letters. Every time he traveled, he wrote them. He told me to give them to you if anything happened. He rushed to a desk and returned with a thick stack of envelopes. I remembered them instantly. I wrote one before every trip. Not a legal will, just something to ease her fear. Her parents died when she was 4. Ever since, she was terrified people would disappear. At the orphanage, if I was gone too long, she'd cry herself sick. The first time I traveled with the director and came back late, she clung to me all night, shaking. I held her like my grandmother used to hold me and whispered, Don't cry. I'm not leaving you. It became a ritual after that. Sarah's hands trembled as she tore the envelopes open. I leaned closer. I'd forgotten what I'd written, but I remembered the first line of every letter. I'm not leaving you. Tears splashed onto the pages. She read everything. Notes about medicine. Reminders to throw out expired food. Silly jokes about wanting something ridiculous at my funeral. The last letter was different. It was written before my final trip. We just decided to get married. I never imagined anything could go wrong, so I didn't write a farewell. I wrote about the wedding, about embarrassing Mike, about replacing the bouquet with a cat toy, so someone would be forced to adopt a kitten. about making her wear a frog costume and dance. Plans, dreams, none of them would ever happen. Sarah crushed the letters to her chest and screamed my name. The sound was raw, animalistic, like something breaking apart from the inside. Ben, come back. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Only now did she finally understand what she had lost. I crouched in front of her and lifted my hand, patting her head the way I used to. My hand passed straight through her hair. I pulled back, quietly disappointed. Even though she couldn't hear me, I still said it. Sarah, this time, I'm the one who doesn't want you. She cried until she collapsed. Mike took her to the hospital. When she woke up, she was eerily calm, staring at the ceiling. After a long silence, she swung her legs off the bed. Mike watched closely. The moment she climbed onto the windowsill, he rushed forward and yanked her down. "What are you doing?" he shouted. She didn't answer. She tried to climb back up. He hit her again. "What is wrong with you?" She wiped the blood from her nose and spoke flatly. "I'm going to Ben. He's timid. He'll be scared alone. You have the company. You can't leave. So it makes sense for me to go." I recoiled. "No, absolutely not." Mike laughed bitterly. "Be with him? You think you deserve that? You should live long, and suffer." I knew better. Someone like her wouldn't suffer forever. Not for me. Mike called the staff in. "Watch her. Don't let her die." Then he leaned close and whispered something cruel. "If you die, I'll dump your ashes into a sewer. You'll never see Ben again." She didn't react. I started to panic. If she was trapped here, did that mean I was too? 2 weeks later, she found a way. She'd been saving her sleeping pills. She took them all at once. I didn't care whether she lived or died. I hadn't seen a single other soul this whole time. I didn't think I'd see her either. But as her consciousness faded, mine blurred too. Time folded in on itself. Sunlight swept across desks. The smell of chalk filled the air. Ben. A familiar voice cut through everything. I turned. 18-year-old Sarah stood there, bathed in warm light, eyes red. She grabbed my hand and pressed it to her cheek. "It's really you," she whispered. "Are you here to take me with you?" I heard when people die, the one they love most comes to get them. The world went silent. I tried to pull away. She held on tightly. "No." She froze. "Why?" I laughed softly. "When did loving you make me forget reality? What makes you think that once I'm dead, I'd erase everything and come looking for you?" I asked quietly. Why would forgiveness be automatic? She panicked, shaking her head. "No, Ben, I didn't know it was you lying there. I swear I didn't know." I wiped my hand against my uniform, the motion instinctive, like I wanted to scrub something away. "Does that really matter? You were holding him. You were crying for him. That part is real, whether you recognize me or not." She grabbed my hand again, desperate. "I'm sorry. It's my fault. I love you. I only want you. You just what?" I tilted my head. "You got bored. You got tired of something steady. Life felt dull, so you reached for excitement. And because I was family, you assumed I'd always be there, waiting." I pried her fingers loose. "Sarah, you're selfish. And I was wrong to hope you'd ever be different." She squeezed her eyes shut. "I'm sorry." Once, she was the one who promised never to leave. Now, all she had left was apology. "Hit me?" she begged. "Yell at me? Hate me? Just don't say you don't want me." I laughed, not loudly, not cruelly, just tired. "After I died, I was stuck beside you. I watched you mourn him. I watched you trade away my work like it meant nothing. I watched you travel the world with his ashes. Do you know how that felt?" She reached for me again. "Ben, that's enough." I stepped back. "We were a mistake. Let me go." I turned toward the light. For the first time, she didn't follow. Peace isn't something you find. It's something that arrives when you finally release what's weighing you down. I understood then why I'd been unable to leave. It wasn't her. It was the promise. The engagement. I looked down at the ring still on my finger. It burned, as if reminding me of vows. Spoken too early, too blindly. She'd thrown hers away without hesitation. Why was I the one still bound? I slid the ring off. It dissolved into light. My body felt lighter than it ever had, like gravity had finally given up on me. At the edge of that brightness, I saw him, leaning casually, arms crossed, watching. "Why did she choose you in the end?" he asked. I didn't slow down. "That's none of your business." "Don't you regret leaving her?" he called after me. I didn't answer. Regret? I loved honestly. I gave everything I had. I didn't betray anyone. I wasn't the one who needed to carry regret forward. If anything, choosing to leave was the bravest thing I ever did. Years later, if you ask Mike, he'll tell you it was an ordinary Friday. Dinner together. A casual goodbye. Nothing that felt like an ending. And then Ben was gone. Sarah didn't survive either. She took too many pills, not because she wanted rest, but because she didn't want to live. Mike couldn't bring himself to follow through on his anger. In the end, he buried her beside the man she loved and the man she lost. Ben's headstone carries the words he once joked about. "This planet sucks. Half a star. Would not recommend." Mike visits when he can. Sometimes he brings tea. Sometimes soda. He wouldn't mind, he says. Clover grew near the grave eventually. It sways when he approaches. It reminds him of the orphanage, of a boy on a swing, waving like tomorrow was guaranteed. 5 years after Mike married, his daughter was born. She was tiny, fragile. When the nurse placed her in his arms, he froze. On her shoulder was a birthmark shaped like a clover. Some bonds don't lead to rebirth. Some only teach you how to let go. And that, in the end, was enough.